Welcome to our lecture on the Parabolic SAR indicator. This is also a trend indicator. It is often referred to just as parabolic, sometimes as PSAR, and sometimes just as SAR or SAR. The SAR is short for stop and reverse, the parabolic stop and reverse. Now, as you can imagine by the name, this indicator would show you when a trend is likely to stop and go in the opposite direction. As it is a trend indicator, it will also be found in this section over here, and as always we simply click and drag it onto our chart area. I keep the color at lime green, it shows off nice and bright, and I do not change any of the settings as they are correct for my intents and purposes and for what I would like to teach you. So I simply click OK, and there we go, a long series of dots running up and running down. Now, as you can see at first glance, when the dots are running downward, the price action is also moving downward, and when the dots are running upward, the market action is upwards. Now, how do we use this indicator? How do we analyze what it is telling us? And we're quite lucky that at the time of the recording of this lecture, we have actually had a change over from a bullish trend or a bullish price action, and the current price action is probably in a correction. It's probably not a trend change yet, it's a correction, but it is currently moving in a bearish direction. Now, this indicator is super simple to use, and that's why this lecture is going to be nice and short. Very simply, when we have a downward moving series of dots, and that series of dots is suddenly touched and moved underneath our candles and now changes into an upward movement, we know that our trend has now changed, and our trend is, in this example, now bullish. Similarly, when a bullish series of dots has been touched by a candle and has changed down to a downward series of dots or a bearish series of dots, we know that the price action has now changed direction, and as we can see in this case, it was merely a correction before the trend continued. Few important things to remember about the parabolic SAR, the stop and reverse, is that it also indicates the strength of a trend by virtue of the distance between the dots and the candles itself. We can see here we have a very large distance between the dots and the candles, indicating that the trend is quite strong, and as it continues, the dots get closer and closer and closer to the candles as the market was in a bit of a range there, and as the dots got closer to the candles, we know that the trend is actually losing momentum. We can see here, for example, where the dots remained quite close to the candles, there was no real trend, the market was in a range, and here again we have dots quite far away from candles, indicating a stronger breakout and a stronger trend. That is the one thing we look at, is the distance between the dots and the candles, indicating the strength of the trend. The second thing we look at is the angle of the dots. We can see here that the angle is quite sharply upwards. It's quite a sharp angle, also indicating quite a strong trend, and here we have a rather flat angle indicating a range. Now, very important note, guys. The parabolic SAR will throw out false signals when the market is in a range, as the market was in a range over here. We can see a false change over there and a false change over there as well. That is why we can never, as with any other indicator, we can never use the parabolic SAR as the one and only tool to use when we make a decision whether to trade or not. The parabolic SAR, just like any other indicator, is used at its best when we have a confirmed trend. So please revisit the section of this course that deals with trends in the market. How do we determine a trend? Once we know by virtue of highs and lows that we do have a trend, then we can use the parabolic SAR as a confirmation, for example, of the strength of the trend by measuring the distance between the dot and the candle. For our more shorter term traders, our less aggressive traders, those that are a little bit more on the safe side, here's how we can use the parabolic SAR to determine when to exit a trade and where to place our stop losses. We can exit, for example, if we were in a bullish trade over here, we can exit the trade, take our profit, the moment that the highest dot of the upward range of dots is touched and changes over and goes above the candle. We can take our profit just to be on the safe side. Similarly, if we entered the market at this point over here and we were trading in a bullish direction, we were trading up, we were purchasing, buying, we will have placed our stop loss somewhere below this point. Again, refer to the part of this course where we deal with where and how we place our stop losses. But fact of the matter is our stop loss will have been somewhere below this point. And as the dots continued to form in a bullish fashion, we could have manually changed our stop loss and moved our stop loss to the last dot that has formed. So if we were not watching the market actively, we could have changed our stop loss, and it will then have automatically taken us out of the trade the moment that that last dot was touched and moved to the upside of the candle. And that, in a nutshell, guys, is the parabolic SAR, the parabolic stop and reverse. It is a trend indicator, and just to recap, the strength of the trend is indicated by the distance between the candle and the dot. The dots can be used to manually move your stop loss into a profit area. The more careful traders may decide to take profit once a dot is touched and moved to the opposite end of the candle. Similarly here, where we had a downwards move, when this dot was touched and it moved to the bottom side of the candles, if you were in a sell position, in a short position over there, that may have been where you wanted to take your profit, and you may have well placed your stop loss and moved your stop loss according to how the dots kept forming in your bearish trade. And that is it, guys. I told you at the beginning, parabolic SAR, very simple to use. The parabolic stop and reverse. This is what it is used for. This is what it tells you. Thank you for watching this part of the course, and we look forward to welcoming you to the next part.